It is go time on another edition of the Eye on Life podcast. We have clearly we have rockers with us making that the hands gesture there. I love it. I'm missing live music these days, and we're going to talk a little bit about what you guys are kind of a COVID creation, which I don't know if that's something that we really want to say too loudly, right? A COVID creation, but we'll make a little bit though, right? A little bit. So we are we're joined by the Warp Kings today, and I'm excited to talk to you guys because you guys have a really cool concept. It's very creative, and it's the closest thing that we have to live music right now. Before we get started, I want to introduce you guys. But before we get started here with the Warp Kings, I want to ask you guys a very important question.
Shoot.
What is, it's been since August 2019 since I saw my last live show. It was Korn and Alice in Chains in Saratoga Springs, New York.
Wow.
One of the best. I don't know if you guys have ever been there. It's one of the best concert venues around. It's amazing. And I'm curious to know each one of you, which is the last live concert that each of you have been to?
Ooh. Well, we made the trip down to Seattle to go see Don Broco, a band from the UK. They were playing the Showbox, but it wasn't actually at the normal Showbox. There was like a secondary room or something. So people who know the Showbox in Seattle is like a wicked venue. The one we went to was great too, but and Don Broco was awesome. They were one of like 5 bands playing. They're like a third band or something like that. But it was one of the funnest shows. Is that a word? Funnest? It's one of the best shows like I've been to because I'm such a big Don Broco fan. They're a band that just like took me back to like my youth, kind of when you could mosh and just go crazy and get lost in the music. I haven't found a band that's done that in a long time. So check out Don Broco.
And hopefully we'll be able to get to a point where we can see bands like that in live venues sooner or later. I mean, obviously everybody's health and well-being is much more important than that. I always make sure that's my caveat, because I can see somebody getting on social media to me and saying, hey, come on, man, give it a rest. Music's not as important as people's health. I get that, but it's still something that's very important to a lot of us. And even now, even with COVID, it's helping us get through some of these tough times. Brandon, I want to ask you the same thing. Which is the last concert that you attended live?
I think the last one I went to see was Def Leppard.
Ooh, that's a good one. Okay.
Yeah. At Rogers Arena in Edmonton. Yeah.
We'll pour some sugar on me action there. And we're going to talk about some of the influences, but I want to introduce you guys. So the Warp Kings, and we have Brandon Kroeger and Scott Rock. Do you go by Scott Rock or Scott Holman? Because Scott Rock is like a badass.
I go by Scott Rocker, all one word.
Scott Rocker, one word.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's
the way it penetrates on Google. If you Google Scott then Rocker, there's nothing. But there's a few pages if you do Scott and Rocker together.
Well, welcome to the show. Welcome to the Eye on Life podcast, the Warp Kings.
Thanks for having us, man.
And some of you may recognize Brandon's last name, and I'm going to be very clear here, Brandon. Chad is your cousin, not that you're his cousin. Well, I mean, in other words, I'm putting you as more prominent there.
Well, Brandon is older.
That's right.
So you deserve it, and we're not going to get too much into Nickelback, but we, people that do listen to the show, and I did mention this when we first started talking that, and actually, maybe I will just before I really formally introduce you. The reason why I started talking about Nickelback on the show, and it goes back to my first show, was that I don't understand. I saw these articles about this hatred towards the band. You know that, right? It was mind-boggling to me because first off, it's a great band. And it sells out, Madison Square Garden, and they go on these world tours, and they're very popular. They're selling millions of albums, but yet there's this faction of people that hate on Nickelback. And so I did a full rant on this because I don't understand why, because there are so many other bands that deserve more hatred, far more hatred than Nickelback. I mean, I guess I can understand if you don't like a band, that's one thing, but the hatred and the animosity there, and I used that Maroon 5. I like Maroon 5, but Adam Levine can be he can be pretty cheesy. There are a lot of bands that I think can provoke that kind of activity. I don't know why Nickelback. Maybe you guys can have some insight. And Brandon, weren't you part of Nickelback at the very beginning as well? You were affiliated with the band.
Yeah, I was so.
Played drums for the band.
Yeah.
So you were part of the early incarnation of the band, but what is it that you're noticing as far as, again, it's a very popular band. He's got a great voice. They have some ballads. I think that angers people. Sometimes then they get in that little hard rock. I know some people said a lot of their songs sound the same, but they're a good rock band. They're radio friendly. I don't know if that's a negative for most people, but why do you think that, or what have you heard that there's this hatred towards that band?
You know what? I think it really just comes down to people like to get on the bandwagon and somehow it becomes cool to hate the band. I don't understand it, but it seems to be what it is. And there always seems to be a band at different point in times. I understand back maybe in the 80s, AC/DC, everybody hated AC/DC, yet they were one of the best selling bands ever at the time. And I heard Imagine Dragons lately, that's one of the bands now that people are hating on. So there's always got to be somebody.
Yeah.
That is true. Scott, what do you think about that? Scottrocker, what do you think?
The thing about having a worldwide fan base or just being known worldwide, not everyone's going to like you. Like Justin Bieber. Right. You know, you love him, you love the Bieber, you hate the Biebs, right? And the thing is, it became funny in memes and online to make fun of Nickelback. And once someone made a joke about it, famous people would make jokes about it, and that kind of stuff, it kind of snowballs, right? Like it is a tribute to their success. That's the first off. And then second off, it's just fucking rude. And people like being mean online. That's part of it, you know. And people like, oh, they're the worst band I've ever heard. Oh, really? Well, they won like, I think they were like 2010 Billboard's Band of the Decade. They, you know, so love them or hate them, they're so far out there that they're just common knowledge, and you know, everyone knows and loves or hates them. I love them.
I am a fan of the band, and the reason why I went on this rant was because I just thought it was so uncalled for. I mean, and you Google it, and you see there are these articles that have been done. You go to YouTube, there are videos about why this historical hate of Nickelback. But clearly, to your point, though, you know, when success breeds hatred, I think a lot of times, right?
Yeah.
And I think that you're right, though, Scott. That does show how far you've come. It's like when people, you know, famous people get mocked on TV or impersonated on Saturday Night Live. That's when you know you've made it. Yeah. So I guess that's kind of a good thing. So we have Scottrocker and Brandon Kroeger from the band, the Warp Kings. And before we get started, I want to just a special shout out to a few new listeners. We have some listeners, some new downloads from Montreal. We got to stick with the Canadian theme.
Yeah,
Montreal's rocking, and I know you guys are Western Canada.
Mm-hmm. I'm as far west as you can get.
You're Vancouver, right? You're the Vancouver area.
I am, yeah.
And I know Brandon's in Alberta. Is there like a rivalry between? I've always wondered. So as far as geography goes, because in the United States, you know, there's that East Coast bias, that West Coast bias, wherever you are. Is that a feeling like? Do people in Vancouver think they're superior to like the East Coast, Montreal, Toronto crowds, or is everyone getting along? Or
I can't really completely attest to that, but what we always say in Vancouver is the center of the universe is Toronto, because they make it so.
Right.
So we kind of like, just like the states could almost be like split in the middle a bit, not quite in the middle, but on the sides. And you know, like if the East Coast and the West Coast like came together, they'd be more cohesive than the people in the middle going either way. You know what I mean? Like I'm a total redneck from Alberta. When I moved out here, you know, my redneck-ish started to like lessen a little bit. And, you know, you start accepting more things just because there's more stuff here. But do we think we're better than the Albertans? Yes. No,
that's what you get in the United States. You know, you get in the United States, again, everybody in the West Coast thinks there's an East Coast bias with sports and music and all that. And maybe it probably is true. But I feel like Canadians are friendly. I feel like Canadians get along. I feel like they're very happy. Is that, I mean, I'm not trying to put a stereotype on you. That's a good stereotype, but is that, I mean, it just seems like happy people up there. Mostly. You guys are happy.
I think you're right.
I think you're right. I think so. Yeah.
I do believe that, you know, the happiness is kind of everywhere. You know, if you're happy, you attract it, you know. My dad goes to New York City and he talks to everyone on the subway. And my brother's like, you don't talk to people here. And everyone just chats my dad up because he's happy and having fun learning. And, you know, if you're happy, you can get through life pretty easy.
Well, and I guess making music will make you happy.
I don't know what
That'll
I'm
that'll
talking
certainly do it. And so thank you for the people that are listening in Montreal. Share us, like us, follow us. Also, some new listeners in Washington D.C., our nation's capital here, which fortunately is still standing after inauguration and all the madness in Washington. But we're hopefully calming down a little bit, and we're going to talk about music today. I also just want to briefly thank my show sponsor, COVID mask producer, entrepreneur, mustny.com. They're actually close to Canada, out in Buffalo, New York. And
Cool.
they do a great job. Chris Bossert, Monica Perez Bossert, they make beautiful masks. They're relatively inexpensive, and they're entrepreneurs. So let's support small businesses. Let's also support music during this time, because I really feel like music is playing a role right now that is crucial to our sanity. Mm-hmm. And the Warp Kings you guys are doing your part to bring music to us, the consumer. Right, we're not able to go out and listen to shows live. We just said that at the beginning of the show, and you guys have a fascinating concept. Because you're performing, but you're all performing in different places, which I find to be. So I want to know a little bit more about how did you start the band, and how did you start this concept of online? To me, it seems like if you're in a band and you're in the same room, it would be challenging to get everyone on the same page with it. You guys are in different locations online doing it. How did you create this concept, and how did you form the band, and why?
Definitely easier playing covers like we do. But I'll let Brandon take over on how it happened.
Yeah.
Because it's all
you know what, essentially when we were locked down, before that, like we were always getting together, jamming with various bands. Scott, you were busy with your band, Kurds and Way. I had some local people I was playing with. You talked to Mike, of course, with Nickelback. He's busy. Once we were locked down and we were looking for an outlet, I started jamming with various people in the same town, but doing this same concept. And as soon as I realized that I'm playing with people in the same town, but we're not physically getting together, why wouldn't I extend the boundaries? Geography doesn't matter. So that's when I reached out to Scott, and he was into it. And it just fell into place. Everybody was excited to do it. And so we didn't really get together initially with the intention of becoming a band. We just wanted to make music and have fun. But our first tune, we did Midlife Crisis right off the bat. And it turned out really well. So we just thought it was such a good thing to kind of continue on with and share, put it out there so people could enjoy it.
I want to talk more about that song, and that's a great song. I love Faith No More. And that's a great song that you chose. And I'm curious to know why you chose that. We'll get to that in a second. And the other thing that always fascinates me about music, and music is a big part of my life. Grew up going to concerts, and again, that's why I was saying how much I miss live music. And it's just something that's always been a conversation with family and friends. And I'm always fascinated by how bands get their name, so Warp Kings. How did this? There's got to be a story of some sort. It's a great name. It's very catchy, obviously marketable. How did you come up with this name? How did you become the Warp Kings?
Sitting out at a campsite with my wife, having a few drinks, brainstorming names. It just came from, I don't know where, it just popped out. But kind of the idea behind it is it's a little bit of a time warp with all of us getting together. We used to play together in bands many, many years ago. So that's kind of where the word warp came in, and Kings, it just seemed to flow.
Now, this is
how long ago, Brandon? How old are you?
We have
25 years ago.
25 years ago. There you go.
Yeah.
Well, we have talked about it. We have talked about on the show before, full pause, that you're not supposed to ask people how old they are. I personally don't have a problem with it. But I know people don't. Usually it's just indicated by the gray hair. But nonetheless, it's all good. And I do just want to go back to what we were saying before, because of your Nickelback connection, and that's your family, obviously. And now, when you first started, you were actually in the early part of Nickelback. Is that what I might want to make sure I did my research correctly here?
Yeah, I played on the first EP and the first album.
Okay.
Was with the band when we were kind of taking off. We were in the early stages.
So how is it now to have been part of that at the very beginning? And we talked about the hatred, but clearly they're a huge band. They have a song called Rockstar, and they literally are rock stars. But but how has it been for you to kind of see the growth and the personal connection that you had with the band, and now where they're at, not only from a music standpoint, but really from a pop culture standpoint as well?
Mhm.
How has that been for you to kind of see that growth? It must be pretty unique to see that, I would think.
You know what? It's an awful lot of fun to watch it. I am so happy for them. I'm happy to be kind of on the peripheral with the whole thing and seeing what they're doing. Um, to me, I guess I've got a bit of a different perspective than so many people, and I guess a very similar one to what Scott has. Growing up with the guys, they're just our friends, our relatives. Um, they're like anybody else. So to a certain extent, it almost seems surreal that they are as big as they are.
Right, right.
But yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
It is interesting because I will say, and then I want to talk about Kurds and Way with Scott here in a second, his band. But they do seem to be fairly when you see these guys, Nickelback, they seem to be fairly down to earth. They look, when I say they look like normal guys that you would hang out with, that you might see at a restaurant, that would be walking down the street. They seem normal, which I know sounds ridiculous because,
Mhm.
but if I, when you see Bieber walking out, Scott, you brought up Bieber before. I don't know. He doesn't always look so normal. He looks like he's playing that part of that super pop star. Nickelback, they just look like normal guys that love to play music. And is that kind of it? I mean, they're kind of laid back and down to earth guys.
Yeah, I mean, I think Chad's the most recognizable, and he's the most rock star-ish of the group.
For sure.
But he likes to have fun with it. He really likes to spread his fun. If he goes to a club, he's like buying the whole place drinks.
That's awesome.
He's like, he does his rock star stardom. He does it a lot of grace. It's really fun to watch. It's fun to be a part of like his little entourage. If you can squeak in there sometimes, it's always a big thrill.
And now, Scott, I know you have a band as well. In addition to the Warp Kings, it's Kurds and Way. And what kind of music is that another cover band, or is that are you guys writing your own songs?
No, we write our own songs. We do pride ourselves in playing a lot of covers live, because we don't play a ton. We don't tour. If we tour, we don't tour far, like maybe to Alberta and back kind of thing.
Right.
But we don't want to saturate our local audience with too many shows, and because we're not. Your competition is all the writers that have hits on the radio. So when people come to see your band play, if you play like 12 of your own songs in a row, it's like, okay, I don't write as good as Chad, So we throw in a bunch of covers to have fun with. And like our style is still pretty heavy. We're kind of watering the guitars down over the years, and we have keys, piano, and we try and incorporate kind of some kind of country feel. No one would get that if they heard it. It's the furthest thing from country. But instrumentation wise, we have fiddle when we can and stuff like that, and squeak banjo in when we can. So it's kind of like a hodgepodge, but in the end, it's kicking you in the ass still.
So for you guys, is music a hobby for you? Is it a living? Are you trying to make a living off of it? Do you have like for quote unquote day jobs? Because I know you're busy, you're doing a lot, and I know I forgot which one of you. I know one of you, Scott, it may have been you, I think, who maybe late at night while you're if you have kids or something, and you're recording music late at night where you have some free time. But is music your life, or is it a hobby? And I'll ask that to both of you.
Brandon, you go first.
Music for me is definitely a hobby. I do it because I love doing it. I'm the managing partner at a CPA firm. Lots of responsibility going on with that. So this is a fantastic outlet, and really what I grew up doing. And originally that was my original career goals, was to play music.
That's great. I mean, it's amazing. And Scott, same thing for you. I mean, is this something that because now you're doing the Warp Kings, and you're in you have another band, so that takes up a lot of time. Are you? Is this a living for you? Is this your life, or do you have something on the side as well?
I mean, I write songs with the ambition to make it my career.
Okay,
that's like kind of my goal. But no, it's my secondary. I have a job in television, and we haven't taken a break for COVID, so adding another band and stuff on top of what I'm doing, I'm like spread pretty thin. So that's why it's all at night.
Right.
Right. But yeah, it's my dream to be a professional musician.
So would the Warp Kings have formed if not for COVID? Because we talked about that earlier. We talked about, and I didn't think so, because I know this is like this is really a creative outlet for you.
Mhm.
And again, we mentioned earlier that this is something that you're doing all remote, which I think is a fascinating concept. I don't know if there's anybody else that's doing that. Maybe not at the level that you're doing it. But how is this sort of, a lot of people going COVID crazy, right? We're stuck in our homes, we can't go out, or, I mean, you can for a little bit, but how has this kind of helped you, this project, the Warp Kings? How has that kind of helped you stay sane? Has it been an outlet for you, for both of you? You could both answer that. It'd be great.
Yeah, you know what? Huge for me. It's absolutely been an outlet. Um, and totally unexpected. So, I mean, if you go back in my history looking at it, I say with, playing with Nickelback, and at a time, drums were my life. That's what I grew up doing. I spent 4 years in college playing drums, playing jazz. So absolutely love doing it. And then I stopped doing music for an awfully long time. So this really just snowballed and picked up and has been an awful lot of fun. I've enjoyed it.
So we're talking to Brandon Kroeger and Scottrocker, Scott Holman, from the band The Warp Kings. And I know now, Scott, you're the vocal. Now, I'm glad you brought that up, Brandon, because you're the drummer.
Mm-hmm.
So we got that going on. And then Scott, you're the vocalist. And
Yeah.
so when you're singing now, is it? See, well, we don't get laryngitis. We have a lot of more music to write. We know that. But as you're belting out these tunes, is the emotion that's coming from you, is it different now than maybe it was a few years ago when life was quote unquote normal, or is it really just the same? It's a passion either way. But I just feel like a lot of things have changed. The way we think has changed. The way we've had to live has changed, and I'm wondering if that's impacted your vocals and the songs that you're singing for the Warp Kings.
I'm gonna say no.
Okay.
I'm gonna say no. It hasn't for me. I've been lucky enough to be able to keep working. And I mean, the first month and a half, 2 months of COVID was really weird. You're fucking weird walking beside someone on the street or touching a door handle, and going to work every day. All that kind of stuff kind of dropped away, and our normal became normal pretty fast. So doing the music thing, like that's my escape. So it doesn't really affect my music because I'm really focused on that. When I do these Warp King songs, I don't like putting lyrics down and like marking lyric sheets. This is where the note goes. This is a fall. This is a vibrato. I just listen to the songs like ad nauseum. So before I go in, I just listen to the track for like a day. And then when I get in the studio, I just sing my interpretation of what I got out of that. So when you listen to the Faith No More version that I do, it's nothing like the Mike Patton version, because I'm not trying to do that exactly. I mean, I'm doing what I remember from it, but there's so many drops and falls and stuff that he does in the song. Unless I really, really map it out, I'm not even going to come close. So I just wanted to be cool, and I didn't care if I came close. You know what I mean?
Well, that's interesting. That kind of actually leads me to another question, because I was going to ask you guys that when you do cover songs, and we did a show early on when I first started the podcast. Actually, a buddy of mine from high school was in a cover band, and I always, this is just my personal feeling. I'm not saying that this is fact by any means, but I sort of feel like if you're going to do a cover, if you're going to cover a song, it can't be as good. It almost has to be better. Otherwise, it's like, what's the point? I mean, I've heard some amazing covers, and I've heard some covers of songs, and I'm just like, what did you just do to that song? What you butchered it. One that I used in that last show, I thought the Free Falling by John Mayer, I thought was a great remake. I love Tom Petty, but I really thought that John Mayer did justice to that song. I'm sure there'll be people that disagree with me on that. I thought it was amazing. And so I guess I'm wondering, and you did kind of answer it, but when you do these songs, and I know you've I think you've released 2 or 3, and you have about 7, and you're going to be releasing some more. But Scott, you're saying that you're trying to make them more your own. You're trying to make, it's the Warp Kings version of Midlife Crisis, not we're trying to sound just like Faith No More, right?
Yeah,
you're trying to make it more your own.
We grew up playing in cover bands, and we never kind of ever really tried to play them exactly like the artists. We were just kind of doing our own thing and having fun. And what growing up in the 80s, like it was always kind of a faux pas. Like if you were a band doing covers, you were cheesy, it was kind of like frowned upon.
Right,
and I was like, I never felt that way. I was like always happy to just be playing. And for me, I'm like, if you look at blues artists, the song will get covered by 30 artists. Right. And no one cares. But in rock, you do it, and they're like, you're doing a cover song, are you? So I take the same approach as when I was in my teens and 20s playing in a cover band with Brandon, and we just ripped it and had fun, and fun is the basis of the whole thing. At least for me it is. But it's different for everybody. Like, we're not going to say the guitarist doesn't go and try and play the notes exactly, because I don't know what he's doing. Everyone gets their own take on it, because we're not together. We don't sit down and talk about like a strategy or producing together. We just like nailed it.
Oh, we see, this is what happens.
Bass put on by Mike, so we're like, no one's in charge. It all just happens, and this is what we get in the end. And there's a song that we did that didn't come out.
There's a song that you did, and you decided to nix it. You're saying?
Well, we're doing stuff like in and out of order. Like, we have a bunch of stuff like ongoing and done and blah blah blah, and certain levels of being mixed. And one that I proposed to the band like still hasn't gotten mixed or brought out yet. Maybe because it's not ready, or maybe because it's not that good. It's just, well, these songs have to like speak to everyone before they're going to get handed out, and not all of them are going to get videos done to them. But when the feeling is there, it's like, oh, this one needs a video, then we're going to do those too.
I have to ask you about Midlife Crisis. So as we said, it's a great song, and we'll put that on social media so people know if they don't know the song by Faith No More. And you guys, I thought you guys absolutely nailed it. I mean, first of all, the video is great. It's like I want to put it on my iPad, my iPod, go for a jog. You nailed it, and the video is actually funny. There's a little humor in there, which was great, and it was just very authentic. Which is, we like that on the show. We like the authenticity. And I'm wondering why you chose that song. First off, Faith No More has a ton of great songs, and there are a lot of bands that you could have done for your first song. And so I'm curious why you chose Midlife Crisis by Faith No More. And I'm asking you that question not to say that you shouldn't have. It's a great song, but I'm wondering just why you happen to choose that song when there's so many out there. Any special significance?
There wasn't any special significance other than what really caught me or initially put it in my head was the groove. There's something really sticky about the groove I love with the song. You'd think with us being in our 40s and forming this band and doing that, Midlife Crisis is like we're going through our own midlife crisis. Yeah. The irony doesn't get by me on that for sure. But that wasn't the intention or why we did it. It was the song. And when I put that out to Scott, is basically that song and a Beatles tune, and immediately everybody was all over it. And because, Mike as well, that was one of the bands that he was huge into back in the day, still very much enjoys. One of his favorite bass players of all time. So yeah, it just stuck. It just worked.
And it's a great song. It's a great first song for you guys to have produced. And I guess my question, and going back to what we were saying about kind of making the songs your own, I've been to many cover shows before, and sometimes you'll hear people and you'll have a conversation with the people that you're with. Oh, these guys are amazing, or these women are amazing. They sound just like Chicago. They sound just like Nickelback. And people like that, because sometimes they go and they want to hear, and it's like, whoa, that guy sounds just like him. Is that a compliment? I mean, do you want to sound just like the band, or is it kind of like cool when they say, "Oh, I really like what they did with that song"? My buddy did a remix of one of the Blink 182 songs. They did like a different version of I don't remember which one, but it got a great response from the audience. Is that risky to go out there to take a popular song and try to, first off, either try to mimic it and try to sound as close to that song as you can, or play around with it a little bit, make it your own? Is one of those approaches riskier when you're in front of a couple hundred people, when there's no COVID?
Yeah, I think it'd be tougher to sound exactly like the artist. Coming from the vocal standpoint, I mean, I only have, the limited range that I have, and I only have the certain people that I can kind of imitate, if you call it imitating. Like, I wasn't trying to imitate Mike Patton, but we both we both sing in that bit kind of range, and we go from like head and chest to like nasal, and it you can go back and forth through that. And that's why his stuff works for me, because I can get behind that. But I can't sing everything, and I wouldn't want to try and sing like all the artists, because I would fail miserably.
Everybody has their different styles, their different ranges, and I would imagine as a cover band, you want to, you don't want to be, you don't want to necessarily be performing in a band, a cover of a band that you have absolutely no range of that person. They're getting up really high or really low. That could be, I would think that might be a little embarrassing in front of a few hundred people. And let me ask you this question: do you guys, you're a cover band, Warp Kings. Do you have a favorite cover? I'm going to ask you actually a two-part question here. A favorite cover and a least favorite cover. It could be something that you've heard recently, or it could be something over the years that you've heard. Maybe a well-known artist has covered another well-known artist, or maybe it's been a band that you've heard that's covered I'm wondering if you've heard something that really struck you and said, like, as I said, for me, it was that John Mayer, Free Falling. I thought that was awesome. There are obviously others that I've heard, but I'm wondering if you guys have a favorite and maybe a least favorite. One that maybe inspired you to, write a song, and then one that maybe inspired you to jump off a bridge, because it was so god awful. I'm wondering what your thoughts are on that.
I like it. Well, I mean, me and Brandon played together. I mean, it was basically, it was Nickelback and me as the cover band we used to have, Village Idiot.
Right.
And we made sure we didn't play any of those songs. Like all those people, Roxy Roller, and at the bar yelling stuff out. We didn't play any of that stuff. We played really cool, newer, mostly grunge, mostly grunge, and the Tragically Hip, and just a few old ones, but that we really, really liked. So for me, favorite stuff to play, I mean, in terms of covers, I couldn't nail down to one cover, but I love singing the Tragically Hip. I love that band. I don't sound anything like Gord, but I just love getting behind it because it's just like, it's in my heart, I just love it so much. And in terms for hate, like something like Roxy Roller, like I would never like do that cover. I'm
glad you mentioned the Tragically Hip. They're a great band. When I went to school out in the Buffalo area, and so we were an hour and a half from Toronto, so some of those Canadian bands made their way over across into Buffalo, and Tragically Hip, they're a great band. For anybody that has not heard them, check them out. They're great. And Brandon, I want to kind of ask you the same thing. Is there anything that has kind of, you've heard and be like, that's amazing, and then others that maybe you made you cringe a little bit when you've heard and be like, oh my God, I feel embarrassed for that person for trying that?
Well, I'm sure there has been quite a bit of that. I try and put them out of my mind and not remember them. But yeah, definitely. In terms of ones that I've really enjoyed, over the last little while, Weezer with their Teal album, they've had a bunch of songs on there that I thought they did really well. In particular, Africa, and they also did a cover of Rosanna. I thought those were great. Talking about John Mayer doing Free Falling, that's an amazing cover. I love that version.
Yeah. And this is just sort of a logistics kind of question, but when a band, how does that work? So when a band, I've always kind of wondered this, when a band, John Mayer wants to do a cover of Free Fallin', does he have to go to Tom Petty's people? How does that work? Is there like obviously you have to have the rights. There's obviously a lot of rights with music. So I understand that, but how does, if you're in a band and I don't mean just a cover band in upstate New York, I'm talking about, you're John Mayer and you wanted to cover someone. Does your management go to their management and say, we'd like to cover the song? And how does that work? Because there's some songs there have been times where I've heard songs and I'd be like, there's no way that artist would have allowed that song to be played like that, in commercials sometimes. And so how does that process work? Is that a business? Is it a business thing, or how? I've always wondered.
Well, there's a couple ways. I'll let Brandon do the internet version, but I mean, in the States, you really need this. It's called the Harry Fox. It's the Harry Fox Agency, and it's just a small license. I believe it's a mechanical license, and you get it from the artist's publishing, and their publishers want everyone to do the song because it just brings them more money. The artist, in the sense, like if they have control of all the publishing, I guess they could go, no, I'm not interested. But they're, in terms of like money, they get the money still. They get the royalties from it. So it's really valuable to do that for publishers. So you got to get that publishing, and then like we don't deal with any of that. Like Brandon, I'll let you continue with what we do for our songs.
Yeah. Well, it is actually through Harry Fox Agency that we get our stuff licensed as well. We use a service called DistroKid, and you pay essentially a nominal fee. They upload the song to all the streaming services for you. They acquire the license, and for the cost of I think $12 a year, they manage all the royalties for you.
That's amazing. So you get the royalty, and then there's the permission, right? They help out with the legal aspect of it as well. So when you guys play a song, you have the legal right to be playing that song, obviously.
Right. Yeah. They
Yeah,
acquire
like-
that through the I guess through the publisher.
Yeah, like I don't think they're asking Faith No More, is it cool if these guys cover your song?
Right.
No.
Okay.
Although that can be more of a thing apparently on the video side of it, potentially if you don't acquire the licenses ahead, and it's a
They can
different
say-
license
they can-
for the video than
pull
it is
your
for the
stuff.
audio.
Do you know if Faith No More has heard your remake of their of Midlife Crisis? Have you heard
don't.
anything about that? You not sure?
No idea.
I'd be curious to see. Anyway. You did rock it, but I'd be curious to hear. I've always wondered, like, if I'm the band that wrote the original song, I'd be curious to know, like, how I would think about how the cover was done. Was it to my satisfaction, or would I be like nitpicky about it? I don't know. I've always wondered. They're probably, if they're not, I'm sure Faith No More, they're not divas. If you were doing an Ariana Grande song, you'd probably have to have every little note, legalized or something with a lawyer, I'm sure. We're going to start to conclude here. I do have a couple more questions before I let you guys go. You guys have been great. You're listening to the Eye on Life podcast. We're talking with Brandon Kroeger and Scottrocker from the band The Warp Kings. A product that you guys started during COVID. You're a cover band. You've done everything virtually, and there's two more of you as well. I want to make sure it's not just you two. You have two others, right? Three others. Okay. So anyway, so thank them for providing the music as well, because you guys I know you guys are it's a release for a lot of us that can't get out to see live music. But I just have a couple other questions. So Nickelback has the song Rockstar, and it's I feel like it's almost it's the stereotypical rock star with the drugs and the women and all that. And I can't tell. I've always wondered if that song was kind of mocking that lifestyle or sort of validating that lifestyle. So I'm going to ask you guys, as maybe both, right? So as people in the music industry and as people that are close to Nickelback, is that song, is it fairly accurate? When you guys are doing it all virtual now, do you have groupies that are following you on social media and sending you messages, or is that song more of like, maybe back in the day when Motley Crue was doing their thing, or is that actually the real rock and roll lifestyle, what that song kind of portrays about the drugs, the women, the fancy cars, all that?
Well, I think an awful lot of that does still exist. It does still happen. With Nickelback, certain parts are kind of funny. Does Chad have 15 cars? I'm sure he probably does. He might have 20. No shortage of groupies, I'm sure, if he's so inclined. But it's also kind of funny as far as the lifestyle that these guys lead. I've been backstage at a Nickelback concert while the opening acts are going and sitting with Chad, drinking Coke and watching a cooking show. So they are down to earth, regular kind of guys, but they still have some fun for sure.
Well, I would hope so. I mean, that's one of the benefits. I mean,
Yeah.
and the drummer, I feel like I'm glad I got you two guys on here, because people love the drummers and they love the vocalists. Of course, if I had the bassist on here, I'd say the same thing to him.
Everyone loves the bass player.
But what about for you, Scott? And I have to say, like, so Brandon, this is actually a compliment to both of you. You talked about that you're a CPA, you mentioned earlier, and I can see that, but I could also see you rocking out. But I saw Scott, I'm like, this guy looks like a rocker. I mean, this guy looks like, you look the part, and that's part of it. How do you, when you're up there and you're jamming with either band that you're in, whenever you're performing, is it, obviously you're doing it for the love of the music, but are those stereotypes, these guys that are literally, they're literally making love to the microphone and really, playing off the crowd and the women that are in the front and some of the guys in the front too, probably, is it accurate?
I guess it can be for some. I have zero stage fright, and when I go on stage, I do kind of become somebody else. I just go somewhere, and I don't wear in-ears because I can't hear the crowd enough. It's not fun. You put in ears, you just kill half the fun. Boom, you know. And I don't think anyone would disagree with that. But you can definitely sing better. But I'm more into like just having fun and just letting it rip, you know. And I want to be with the crowd when they emote and get everything I can out of it. You know, it's like it's a huge rush. I was lucky enough to play with Nickelback when they were in town here. So Google Scottrocker all together and Nickelback, or even on YouTube, and it'll come up with the track that I played with them on stage, and then you'll get an idea of what I do.
That must have been an amazing experience
Yeah,
for you and for
it
them,
was-
of course, and for both of them. That's amazing. So for the Warp Kings, you know, is this sustainable? Do you guys have a future? Are you going to kind of ride out COVID and then see what happens, go your separate ways, or do you guys actually want to start? I know that if I recall correctly, there was talk about you guys getting together for an in-person concert at some point. You know, you want to have a big bash up in Canada, if I recall. And so post-COVID, whatever post-COVID looks like, is that still something that you want to do? You want to have like a big concert and have everybody up there and just have a big party? Is that kind of where you're headed?
Absolutely. We definitely want to do that. And I mean, just keep doing this as long as we're having fun with it. But playing a show, getting together, 100%. I so look forward to when we can make that happen.
And albums, I mean, will you guys be putting out albums or anything? I know you're up to about 7 songs. What's the future? You know, what does the future look like? You know, if you do the one concert, that's great. But even after that, you know, do you guys see this going on for a few years and still having fun with it, riding the wave?
Yeah,
I hope so.
Yeah, I mean, no one's super taxed by doing it. You know, we have no time limits on it. When you get around to it, you get around to it, and when it comes together, you know, it seems to be working. So I don't see any reason to stop. So it is a slow process, but we're just going to keep at it. I mean, even my own band's a slow process. I've been recording an EP for a year, a little over a year now, 5 songs for a year.
That's I know it can take a while. I know that. And when you guys collaborate, so when you guys, and I want people, we're gonna let you guys, I want to give you guys the opportunity to tell people where they can find you. You have to check out this video on YouTube, Midlife Crisis. It's great and it's entertaining too. I mean, the song is awesome and the video is great. And when you guys did that video, you were all remote. So did you do that all separately, or did you do it at the same time, like through a Zoom call, or how did you do that? Because it came together flawlessly. It appeared as though you were all in the same room, really, and I know you weren't. But were you all doing it separately, or was it something that you did together on through technology?
Scott was he was the guy behind the videos.
Through the genius of television.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right, because you're a TV guy, right? So you were able to maybe to do a little bit of that. So,
yeah, I wanted to make it look like it was like live Zoom, but it wasn't. Everyone had kind of like not a script, but just little ideas of what they should do and could do, and then I pulled it all together, and we did another video. What's the one for the Christmas song, Brandon?
Oh, Run Rudolph Run.
Oh, Run Rudolph Run.
Yes.
Which is kind of the same, where like everyone mailed in their parts, and then I kind of just do my own little like 1-act play around it to try and lock it all together. And they both came together pretty good. I'm pretty happy with both of them.
So where can people find you guys? Where can people find out more information? Where can they hear your music and learn more about the band and engage? Social media now, especially since we're all in our houses, it's actually a good opportunity for us to maybe engage a little bit more. Where can people find you if they're interested?
They can find us on www.warpkings.com. We've got a Facebook page. We've got an Instagram page. Got a YouTube channel.
Check it out. These guys.
Our music, you can find us on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube Music, all the major services.
I don't know if I should say that you guys are awesome and validate that, or if I should say that you're terrible, and then people will be like, well, if he thinks they're terrible, then we should go listen to them. So I'm going to go with what my heart tells me and says, go check these guys out. They're really, it's unbelievable. And when you're listening to the music, make sure that you just keep in mind, they're not in the studio together. And this is what they're producing. So Brandon Kroeger, who's been, has a rich history in his family, if you recognize the name, but you're doing things on your own as well, which is awesome. So thanks so much. Scott Holman's the Scottrocker with the band, the Warp Kings. And I know you guys are busy, and I probably just took you 45 minutes from producing another song. So I apologize for that. But but thank you
Okay.
for indulging me. And I want to again thank all of our current and future listeners, and mustny.com. Again, order your COVID masks. It certainly can't hurt. And we're going to keep an eye on the Warp Kings, and we're certainly going to keep an eye on life. Until next time.